Venkata. I work for Virtus as a senior architect. I've been in this industry for 14, 15 years, and I just consider last 10 years, 12 years, I'm completely on database management system, AI solution, big data implementation, and I have worked with different type of database management system like SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, and a couple of open source projects. Okay. I have given my blog address. How often you read blogs, articles? Do you read? Yes? Okay, right. So if you have time, just go and have a look on it. I always blog on various, when it comes to my blog, it's always based on data and database management system. But sometimes I blog on different things too. Okay? So see whether you can find some relevant information on data and database management system. Okay, that's about me. Let me just show you the plan. So we'll be talking about data. We'll try to understand what is this unstructured data, and not only unstructured data. I have a couple of slides still. And we'll be talking why this is really important, why we have to understand unstructured data, and how we can access these things. Okay. In addition to that, we are going to have a look on the implementations or the features or the products that have been given by Microsoft for handling unstructured data. Okay, that's the plan. And when we discuss all of these things, if you have any questions, if you need to get something clarified, I prefer to get the questions when the slide is being discussed rather than just waiting till the end. But if something has to be discussed in lengthy, then of course we can discuss at the end of the session. But just try to make this interactive. It doesn't make you bored, or otherwise, I'll be just continuing with all these slides. I want to make sure you get something from this presentation. Okay. So if you have questions, just we will discuss and continue rather than waiting till the end. Right. So let's try to understand unstructured data. But before that, I'm sure that everybody is familiar with structured data. We are always working with database management system databases. Okay. Whenever we have a requirement, we try to understand the requirement, and obviously you get identified entities, identified attributes. Everybody is familiar. I believe that everybody is familiar with these entities and attributes. So whenever we have an entity, whenever we have attributes related to entities, we try to set a structure. We first organize or create a container, and then we'll try to put all these structured data or identified data into it. Now when we do this one, we try to instruct to the system saying, this is how this data set has to be accepted. Okay? If you are working with that type of solution, which means you are working with structured data. So it can be a database management system, it can be a spreadsheet, but you have defined set of rules. You are going to say, okay, if you are sending me, or if someone's sending me customer data, you or the other party has to align with the structure we have defined. I need the first one as the first name. I want the second one as the last name. I have something called credit limit, and this is the data type of it. Okay, so that is how we define the structured data set. As long as you can set with your defined schema, right, it can be considered as structured data set. Okay, right. I'm sure that everybody is familiar with something called SQL. Yes. Okay. Right. So we don't need to talk about those things. But have you heard about this term, schema on write? Just raise your hand if you have heard about this term before. Schema on write. Whenever you pass some information from a system, or let's talk about an interface, somebody is entering customer information, right? So database management system is waiting for those, whatever the things that have been inputted. Now, whenever we get these things, I don't have the image, yes. Okay. So whenever we get these details, can you see this image? I'm not sure. Okay, it's a bit blurred, but now see, we have already defined the structure. If somebody is sending some information, data to our application, we need to make sure this data set is aligned with this structure. This is called schema on write. We cannot send, or no one can send information violating this schema. It should be aligned with the number of columns we have defined if it is a data table. Okay? It should be aligned with the data types we have defined.
Otherwise, system will not accept. So this is one of the key characteristics in terms of structured data. Okay, this is called as schema on write. There's another term called schema on read. We are going to talk about it too. Let's go for the next one. Okay, have you heard about semi-structured data? Examples have been given here. Okay, I'm sure that you have worked with HTML. Everybody has worked with HTML, and you have worked with XML. And when it's come to other type like JSON, some of you have worked with JSON, right? Now, when it's come to JSON, or the XML or HTML, we don't consider them as structured data. It has a structure, but it is not bound to a schema defined, right? When you take a database, in a database management system, it has a schema, define it, right? But when it's come to this, even though it has an inner structure, we can simply have, any type of or any number of elements, nodes inside with this data set. Okay? For example, if you take an XML, which has been defined for holding customer information, you can start with 5-6 attributes explaining the first entity. You have one customer, let's say Dinesh, that's the first customer, right? That is an entity. So that entity is described with 5-6 elements or attributes, or you can call them as columns too. Okay? But we cannot expect that the second entity, another customer, is defined with same number of attributes or same number of columns. So if you see something like that, you need to understand that you are working with semi-structured data. Most of the time, we have worked with structured and semi-structured data. Okay? And this basically says it is self-describing. If you take HTML, it describes the entire data set. Like, when you go through the nodes or the elements, it basically explains or describes saying, these are the things I'm going to hold. And this is the type of this attribute. This is the value of these attributes. I'll be holding this number of attributes for this entity. It basically describes everything. Okay? So this is called as semi-structured data. Right. Now we know structured data because when it's come to most of the application, when it's come to most of the solutions, we work with structured data. And sometimes we work with semi-structured data too. Now let's try to understand this unstructured data concept. And these are some of the definition I have grabbed from the internet. Right? The first one from the Wikipedia and second one from another site. And third one is from one of the articles of the books. I can't remember the exact, or the book or the article, but that's that's the simplest one. Just have a look on the first one. It basically says you will be referring information based on an unorganized structure. If you get a data set which you cannot understand immediately, okay, that because it has no defined columns, it has no defined structure, it has no defined schema, in that case you are working with unstructured data. That's what the first one says. And the second one says the same thing. And it basically says data represent any data that does not have a recognizable structure. Okay, same thing. But if you just think about the last one, right, what it says is, if you cannot have this data set in your relational data structure, consider it as unstructured. That's a very simple, right? If you cannot put them into a data table, right, in one of your relational databases, consider it as unstructured. I was explaining this with another session, and I got a question from the audience saying, but we still store unstructured data, which has no pattern, no structure, in our relational database management systems. Are we storing data like that? Have you ever stored an unstructured data set in your relational database? Yes? Can someone give me an example? Yeah, a Word document, image, right? Think about you are maintaining CVs of your employees. You don't get a structured CVs, right? Because one person maintain experience as a different page, different table, and another person maintains completely different set of things in their CV. So in that case, it is unstructured, but still we can take it and store it in the relational database or relational data table. But we cannot manipulate with our SQL language, because most of the time we accept it as what? Blobs. Okay, right? So, but remember, it doesn't mean that even though we can possibly store these blobs or the unstructured data in a relational format, it doesn't mean that it is structured, right? We just store it. When it comes to data manipulation, you have to use different algorithms, different languages for accessing or analyzing that data. Okay? Let's try to understand it with more points. So it says, does not reside in a field or record. All you have to understand is we cannot easily define a schema for it. Okay? No specific definition for storing, accessing, or processing. You cannot just use your SQL language, like when it comes to data analyzing, accessing, processing. We always use SQL, right? That is the best language for manipulating data. But when it comes to unstructured data, if you see a data set which cannot be easily handled with SQL, then of course it is unstructured, right? And see the, where is the mouse? See the second bullet point, it says might follow structure internally. Now, even though we call this data set as unstructured, okay, it has a structure. We call this as unstructured that because it is unknown to us. But the person who generates this, the device that generates this, know the structure. For example, if you are getting data from a tower, telco tower, that tower or whatever the application that have been set with the tower, it knows the structure, right? It just passed the data set to us. If it doesn't know the structure, it won't be able to continuously send us the data set. All the devices, all other applications that produce unstructured data, it has an internal structure. Okay? The biggest issue with it is the structure defined with this data set is known only to the person who generated or the producer. Okay? So just remember that part. Even though we call it as unstructured data, it has a structure, right, which is unknown to us. And this is the biggest issue with the unstructured data. You cannot use your traditional programs, traditional database management system for accessing, processing, analyzing this. Okay? For example, let's say you have a Word document, right? You want to go through all the words and find out some, let's say, hidden patterns, right? Somebody has sent you a Word document, right? And even though you have stored this Word document in a relational database, right, you cannot, technically it is possible. You can write SQL statement for doing various type of processing, but it is very difficult unless you use a different technique for analyzing the data, right? So that is the last one. That is one of the characteristics when it comes to unstructured data. You cannot use traditional database management system, traditional programming techniques for accessing, analyzing, processing unstructured data, right? So now since we have gone through two slides, those two slides basically explain the characteristics of unstructured data, okay? Now why this is really important? There are so many surveys have been done. I have taken one from something called IDC. This basically says, I'm not too sure whether it is really clear, this basically says that 90% of data will be unstructured by 2015, this year, right? Now, you might argue saying, okay, we have developed so many applications, web application, Windows application, and we have worked with data, and almost all the data, we were able to store it in our relational database. Why these people saying 90% of data is unstructured? The biggest reason for that is we always discard it. We always ignore it. Okay, that's the reason. So now, most of the time, we try to build application software solution for running the business. So we try to make sure the operation is going on with whatever the implemented solutions, right? All days, if you go back to 5-6 years or even 10 years back, right, we can simply run the business without thinking about this hidden data set, the unstructured data set. The 10%, 20% is totally enough for running the business. But now it is not that easy because there are so many information available which can be used for analyzing your business, which can be used for taking decisions. So because of that, we cannot ignore. That is why we call it as it is really, that is why we consider it as really important. You have to access this 90% in order to run the business. If you continuously ignore this part, you will be in a trouble. Okay? So this says previously identified and ignored. Of course, we always ignore. For example, if you maintain a set of websites, right? Yes, you have logs generated from servers. You might keep these logs for 1 week, 2 weeks, maximum 3 months. You just keep it if you want to, troubleshoot something, but you never. There are, solutions, but most of the time, we never take this load and start analyzing it. That because business is running smoothly, okay? But now it is time to, get this previously ignored data set and use them with your business. So there are a couple of other reasons given: holistic view of the business, competitive advantages, reveal social trend of improving customer satisfaction, save time and money. The last point, I have worked with a couple of banks in Sri Lanka. They have worked with unstructured data, right? Nobody says that we are working with unstructured data, but basically they have. The biggest problem is, okay, whenever they have an issue, they go for this data set and grab it and do some, data manipulation, processing, right? After that, they have the result, okay? So they spend about, days, weeks on it, and finally they have the result. The biggest issue is, or the first issue is, the time that needs, weeks or sometimes months. But even after that, if somebody says, okay, we see something wrong with this output, can we, go back and do some modification on it and generate a new output? Whenever you have something like that, you have to start from the beginning. So, for example, if you have spent 3 months for the first part, again you will be spending another 3 months, right? But if you have a solution for that, if you have a defined program for handling unstructured data, you can simply save time and money, that because you have a way of analyzing it. Okay? And some of the other facts have been given. Everybody knows about tweets, everybody knows about FB, right? So because of this, we need to make sure we are ready for unstructured data, right? So it's really, really important. Let's go through a couple of examples. I'm sure that you have heard about these things. The first one, sentiment data. The solutions I have implemented for customers or the clients, specifically on BI and big data, most of the time we ignore this type of data set. The biggest reason for that is the difficulty, right? We cannot easily handle this one. For example, let's say we run a company and we offer the products, we sell products and we offer services, okay? So when you do that type of business, you get customers, right? Now, when it comes to customer, you cannot have, you cannot always have satisfied customers, okay? Obviously, you get complaints. Now, how do you get complaints? Most of the time over the phone. Somebody calls you and says that, I purchased this product from this outlet, and after 2-3 days, it started giving me issues. Okay? Then we said, okay, very sorry for that. We make a note on it, and we'll try to replace the product. That's all. Okay? Think about the emails you get. You might get an email saying, okay, I purchased this item, or I got this service from your, ABC team, and they have given some, they have done some implementation, but after a couple of days, it is not working. We are not satisfied. Yes, we read the mail, and then, we work on it. That's all. We never record it. Sometimes, of course, email is there, but we never access it again. But if you can collect all of these things, the calls you got, emails you received, and then process these things to identify the patterns, why customers are complaining like this? What are our products related to all these complaints, right? All these complaints are coming, or the complaints are based on a specific product category, or is it coming from specific region? If we can find out these things, then we can improve our business. But unfortunately, it's a bit difficult unless you have a solution for handling unstructured data. So this is a good example for unstructured data. Most of the companies, yes, these type of things are available. Okay. In addition to that, we have clickstream, sensor, machine data, server logs. Clickstream, I believe that everybody knows, like those are the data set we get mostly from websites. How your customers or the users have navigated through the website, okay? And those are really useful to optimize your web application, do various type of promotions, okay? If you capture these things and process and identify patterns, then you can use them for promotions and optimization, okay? These are some of the samples for unstructured and semi-structured data. Just remember this part, Clickstream is not exactly unstructured, it's semi-structured. But sentiment data, mostly data you get from emails, over the phone, from social networks, those are completely unstructured, okay? Right, how we can access this? There are two ways. One is, you have the data set, you define a schema on top of it, which means you are not changing the data set you have. For example, let's say you have hundreds of mails, all the complaints, you get the hundred of mails, let's say it's based on text, right? And then you define the schema on it. This is how I want to read. That is called schema on read. Okay, so we talk about schema on write. This is schema on read. You have the data set, you are going to say, okay, I'm define a structure for this, and this is how I'm going to read it. This is how I'm going to access it. This is how I'm going to process it. That is one way. You're not going to change the base data set. Advantage with this is, one person can have one structure on it, another person can have a completely different structure on it, based on the analysis that person wants to do. Right? This is called schema on read. In addition to that, we can use different ETLing application for completely transform unstructured to structure. So you're changing the data set. You might be discarding some of the data related, but basically you'll be converting the whole thing into structured format, and after that, of course, you can use your traditional techniques for analyzing it. In a way, this is easy because once it is transferred, it is available for everyone because everyone is familiar with the traditional techniques, or .NET languages or Java or SQL languages. When it's come to Oracle, Microsoft, they have different SQL languages. So all those things can be done if you go with the second one, right? But in order to convert from unstructured to structure, you might have to remove a couple of things, right? So these are the two techniques we can use for handling or accessing unstructured data. If time permits, I'll show you something related to this. Okay, right. So clear about unstructured data? Any questions based on it? Let's talk about this bit, right? Because we cannot talk about unstructured data without talking Hadoop and MapReduce. Just raise your hand if you have worked with Hadoop before. Only few hands. Okay, so I'm not going to ask about MapReduce in that case. So let's quickly try to understand this Hadoop. So Hadoop is a framework or the platform, open source framework, which is defined or created for handling two things: distributed processing, distributed storage. If you want to get something processed, and if it is really large and complex, you can distribute your data set, including instruction set, and get it processed individually and take it as a single result set. That is called distributed processing. Did you get it? Okay. Other one is storage, right? If you want to store something, we are not talking about 100 records or 1,000 records. We are talking about millions of records. If you want to store all these million records and still you want to handle scalability and fault tolerance, again, this is the platform. This is the framework. Okay. The good thing with this Hadoop is it uses commodity hardware, inexpensive hardware. We are not talking about very expensive hardware. It's completely normal servers, normal the hard disk. Okay. And the scalability, you can start with a couple of nodes or couple of machines. Just think that them as machines, or else you can you can start with 3-4 machines and then you can continue with thousands. Theoretically, there is no limit, right? If you have worked with SMP architecture, semantic multiple processing, you know that when it comes to scalability, you can scale up, you can scale out, but there are always limitations. Sometimes limitation is based on the spec or the motherboard used and some of the other devices you use. Sometimes based on the software like operating system, other application you have installed, right? Even though it can be scale up and scale out, always you will see limitations. But with this framework, when it comes to scalability, you are not going to see that limit. That is the biggest advantage with this Hadoop framework. Okay? And we mainly use for three things we have already discussed: converting data from the unstructured to structured. Everybody has heard about ETL, right? ETLing, extract, transform, loading. We'll be extracting data from sources, and then transform will be changing the structure of it, and then will be loading to the destination. Now, we use this term for explaining this part, ETL. Okay? Can you see that I have mentioned another term called ELT? Have you heard about ELT? Raise your hand if you have heard about ELT. Right? It is same thing, ETL, extract, transform, loading, but here we talk about ELT. Now, when it's come to ETLing, when it's come to processing data, most of the time we need more resources for middle part, transforming part. You can extract data from your sources. It can be FTP, it can be Oracle server, it can be a web service. Okay, we can extract all this data. But when it comes to transformation, we need more memory, we need more processing power, because transformation is always involved with various business logic, complex business logic, complex algorithm. You are converting your data set for suitable format, because after that only the users can read it. Okay? So this uses a lot of resources, the middle part. But with this Hadoop framework, you can simply take this part after loading. That's why we call as ELT. You extract data, load with the Hadoop framework, and then you start transforming that, because it supports distributed processing. Okay, right? In addition to that, you can analyze data efficiently, that because of the framework, and you can use it as a data archival storage, right? Let's try to understand this MapReduce concept. Remember, MapReduce is not a language, it's a concept. So assume that you have stored some data like this. Okay, we have, let's say, the number of items that have been sold for each day by different branches. Okay, so I have a data set like that. Assume that it has millions of records, right? What I want is to get something like this done. It says, I'm not too sure whether you can read it. So it says select country total of the quantity from sales group by country. It's simply, we try to get the total quantities for each country. So assume that you have millions of records like this. Yes, you can do it with traditional database management system. You can execute a select statement like this, but based on the number of records you have, based on the spec of your server, it might take hours, it might take days. It depends on the data set, okay? But with this framework, if I pass this data set to Hadoop framework, initially it distributes my data set. It will break my data set into chunks, right? And based on the number of nodes I have with my Hadoop framework, it will place these chunks in different nodes. So assume that we have 3 nodes, and my data set is distributed like this. In addition to that, it maintains duplicates for handling fault tolerance and all, right? But assume that we have 3 nodes, and my data set is broken into 3. So when I pass a query like this, you have no way of, or you can't directly pass a query like this to the Hadoop environment, because it understands only Java. Okay, when it's come to passing instruction for processing unstructured data, you have to pass this instruction written with Java. Hadoop can understand only Java, right? But assume that you pass this instruction, and then it goes through these nodes. It starts a process called map. So map basically identify key value pairs based on the instruction I have passed, and it tries to produce the required data set from each node. That's a mapping part. Okay, but you have to code like that. It is not going to automatically handle it. Only thing is, since it is distributed, you can get these things done quickly, right? Then the reducing part, based on the instruction set you have passed, based on the complexity of your instruction set, it will use either, sometimes it is not going to use reducing part or the reducers, right? Or else it might use one reduce or multiple reducers. So reduce is the last part of this instruction set. It will basically combine all the results coming from each node and perform, in this case, it will perform the aggregation. So finally you have the result set. This is how you get something processed through distributed environment. This is called MapReduce, okay? So remember, it's a concept, and that is what Hadoop uses. They don't familiar with, or they don't use programming languages like Java and .NET, okay? Now, since this is going to be a part of data team or database team, everybody started facing this issue, how we have to learn Java for doing this one, okay? Not only us, most of the large companies face this. So even Facebook faced this. So Facebook created another project called Hive for handling this one. So Hive is another component, or you can simply say it's a bridge between Hadoop and your relational data environment. Okay? So we can simply use our traditional language like SQL for passing instruction to Hadoop through Hive. So Hive accepts SQL. We don't call it as SQL, we call it as HiveQL, right? But it accepts the instruction using SQL type commands, and it converts the instruction set to Java. So we don't need to worry about writing Java codes. Okay? So we use this one for when it's come to in our case, like when it's come to data and database management solution, right? We use Hive for handling unstructured data when we work with Hadoop. Okay, so clear about Hadoop, MapReduce, and Hive. There are so many other projects, supportive projects for Hadoop, like one called Pig, Spark, and so many projects. All these are open source projects. Just remember, okay, all these are open source projects. But this is what we normally use. Right. So let's try to understand what Microsoft has given to us. Okay. So what is Microsoft vision on data? The first bullet point explains this, right? Process, discover, explore any data, no matter size, type, location, whether it's coming from your on-prem databases, public sources, on the web, you should be able to handle it. You should be able to access it. You should be able to analyze it. You should be able to process it. That's the vision. So in order to provide the infrastructure, Microsoft has produced or released various type of products. So there are two, mainly there are two. One is a SQL Server product suite, other one is Azure platform. Now when it comes to SQL Server, you have something called Analytical Platform System, that is called APS, right? And the other one is Integration Services. Just raise your hand if you have worked with SQL Server. Okay, 90%, okay, fine, right. If you have worked with Integration Services, great. Right, okay. Have you heard about this APS? It is one of the additions. You can consider it as an addition. Have you heard about PDW? Parallel Data Warehouse? Yes? Okay, so it is also one of the additions. Now, most of the additions we have worked with, like Enterprise, BI, Standard, all those are based on SMP architecture. But there's a new, it's not a new one, but basically there's another architecture called MPP. MPP stands for Massively Parallel Processing. It uses the same concept just like Hadoop, distributed processing and distributed storage. So if you go for this edition, you get MPP, Massively Parallel Processing, Parallel Data Warehouse, plus something called HD Insight. We'll be talking about HD Insight. So the combination of all of these things, we get it as APS. But remember, you cannot download this edition and install. It comes as an appliance. So you have to talk with your hardware vendor and get a box down to you. Okay, everybody knows about appliances, right? You have to purchase the whole thing. Okay, so you can use this for handling unstructured data. Other one is using integration services. You can use a couple of new things that have been given by Azure services. You can integrate with integration services and process unstructured data. Okay, I'll show you that part. So when it's come to cloud services, we have various components given. We have something called SQL Data Warehouse. It is the first cloud data warehouse. Still, it is not available with other vendors. Okay, and in addition to that, we have a concept called Data Lake. Data Lake is it is not just one component. It has various type of services like Data Lake Store, Analytics, and HD Insight. In addition to that, we have Data Factory. We'll quickly go through each and every item to understand this. Right. Integration services. Most of you guys are familiar with SQL Server, and everybody knows about the integration services. It is another component that ships with SQL Server product, and it is mainly for handling ETL operations. And the good thing is, most of the time you don't need to write codes for handling ETL operation. It is not only for BI, it is not only for data warehousing, even for small application. For example, let's say you handle a very large system, which is an OLTP system, and you want to have a separate database purely for reporting. Because once you have a proper OLTP implementation, specifically OLTP database, you cannot expect a good performance in terms of data retrieval. Okay, that's how we design OLTP system. We apply so many constraints, we apply normalization rule. We just make sure our system works fine with transactions. Okay, but if it is a very large one, reporting will be an issue. So most of the cases, we have a separate database for handling reporting. So in that case, we have to extract data from OLTP, either one database or multiple databases. We extract data and put it to another database. So you can use this type of tool for creating your ETL package. Most of the time, you don't need to write codes. Okay, you can simply drag and drop components and create it, and then finally you'll be having set of packages for handling ETL part, right? Right. That is called integration services. Let's see how we can use integration services for handling unstructured data. Right. There's a new ODBC driver available for downloading, which is called Microsoft Hive ODBC driver. It can be downloaded and installed in your machine. It allows you to communicate with Microsoft Azure HD Insight. I have a slides for HD Insight. Just remember, HD Insight is the component, the service offered by Microsoft for handling Hadoop environment, or it basically allows you to implement a Hadoop environment with HD Insight. So if you want to get something, if you want to get your unstructured data set process, you can simply use HD Insight for handling it, but you can, the handling part can be done with SSIS, integrating with this ODBC driver. So you will simply getting data, your unstructured data, right? And you will be going through various type of transformation. As a part of it, you might be placing some data into Hadoop environment through ODBC driver, get it processed and take it back and pass it to your destination. It can be a reporting database, it can be another OLTP database, it can be a data warehouse. Okay, this is Hive ODBC driver. Just like that, we have another pack called Feature Pack for Azure. If you have worked with integration services, you know that there are many tasks, control flow tasks, data flow tasks. Those tasks can be used for various operations. So with this feature pack, you have these tasks. You can simply drag and drop, connect with your Hadoop environment, pass the result set, execute a Hive code, and then get the result set back. Okay, so it works just like Hive ODBC driver. You will be getting data from unstructured sources. You do processing, and using these tasks, you can connect with your Azure Hadoop environment and get it processed, take it back, and pass it to the destination. Okay, right. And this is an example for it. Let me go for this and explain it later. Okay, so let's try to understand what is Microsoft HD Insight. So Microsoft HD Insight is completely a Hadoop ecosystem. It's a cloud-based Hadoop ecosystem. Most of the projects related to Hadoop are available with HD Insight. Now, when it comes to Hadoop, if you really want to implement Hadoop without using the Microsoft platform, you have to have good knowledge on it. You have to have infrastructure for it, right? And you cannot do it within a day. Most of the time, it takes weeks for setting up an Hadoop environment. Now, with Microsoft, you can simply open an interface, say, okay, I want to create my Hadoop environment. I want this number of nodes. I can start with 4 nodes. I can start with 16 nodes. Based on your subscription, you can define it. And this is the name for it. This is my storage for it. And create one Hadoop cluster for me. When you pass that instruction, within 5 to 10 minutes, you have your Hadoop environment. And you can start working on it. So that's the biggest advantage with this. So it is available as Windows Azure service, and it includes all of these things. Okay, within 5-10 minutes you can create your Hadoop environment. Now let me go back to this and explain how it works with integration services. Now when it comes to Microsoft, you know that when you try to use all of these things, they charge. Okay, you have to pay. Okay, now there's a disadvantage with HD Insight. When you create the cluster, even though you are not using it, Microsoft charge. Okay, you get a bill saying, okay, you are maintaining a cluster like this. Now because of that, if you now assume that part of your solution you get unstructured data set weekly, you don't get it every day, right? So in that case, you don't need to maintain HD Insight cluster with Azure continuously. You don't need to just pay. Now this allows you to create HD Insight cluster on demand. Okay, all you have to do is just drag and drop and configure. That's all, right? So it creates with the given name, and then you pass. Okay, it's something like this. That's a task for creating. Okay, and then you get your weekly data set. You load it to Azure storage, and then you pass your Hive queries for processing it, and then you discard this. You remove your cluster. So you will be using your HD Insight cluster only for processing part. Once it is done, you can discard. Okay, so that is one of the good things with integration services plus Azure Feature Pack. Let me go back to this. Let me talk about Azure Data Factory. So if you have written ETL application, you know that when it comes to handling multiple sources, various type of complex transformation, it's really difficult. Now those days, when it comes to sources, we had only on-prem data sources. We might be talking to 1 or 2 relational databases, plus we might be taking data from something like spreadsheet. Okay. Now nowadays it is different. You have to get data from various platforms. You might have to talk to Facebook, Twitter to get data. You might have to talk with cloud services for get data. So ETLs become complex. So in order to handle these things without using your infrastructure, Azure Data Factory has been given. So this data factory can be used for handling your ETL operations. It is very similar to SSIS, but it is very similar to something called SQL Agent, which comes with SQL Server. It allows you to create your package connecting with any data source, right? And then you schedule it saying, okay, this is how I want to get this one executed, and you get your destination loaded. Okay? The good thing is it is cloud-based, and you can use this one for processing unstructured data. Let me skip this part. And there's another one called Data Lake Analytics. It is the Hadoop environment. In addition to the Hadoop environment, it uses HD Insight, but in addition to the HD Insight, it allows you to write codes using your familiar tool set, just like Visual Studio. You can use Visual Studio for writing codes for processing unstructured data. Now, you can use C#.NET, you can use VB.NET, okay? But in addition to that, you can use a new language called USQL. Have you heard about USQL? Anyone? Okay, this is a new language. It is available as preview, right? It is called as USQL. USQL is a combination of SQL and C#. So you'll be writing select statement combining C# functions. Now, the biggest issue with unstructured data set is, we cannot use traditional techniques, right? You cannot just say, select this column from this table or this file. It is difficult because we need to do more processing. But when it comes to processing, we know that there are so many functionalities, method, classes available with .NET Framework. So you can use these functionalities available with .NET Framework combining with SQL. That is called USQL. So this allows you to write codes using USQL. It's really easy. Okay, it's really easy. You can write codes using USQL to process your unstructured data, get it processed, and take it back to your environment. How it works? Okay, I'll be sharing this presentation so you can have a look on it. This is an example for USQL. See, it is we have new commands anyway. Extract data from this file, and I'm using extractors class or the object from C#, and I'm using CSV function to split it, right? Then I'm executing simple grouping using select statement, and then finally I put the result of this into this CSV file using outputters C#. The method called CSV, which is available with outputters. Okay, this is C#, and this is C#, right? So you have combined C# with SQL. Okay, right. So I'll quickly show you a very simple code. Okay, let me show you a sample data set, which I'm going to process. I'm going to open an application, third-party application called Cloud Explorer. You might have used this. This can be used for, okay, so this is a third-party application which can be used for connect with your cloud environment, okay? And you can see the file system of it, or if it is Hadoop, you're going to see HDFS system. So I can click on it. I'm connected, right? So it shows me that my Azure storage has a container like this. I'm extremely sorry, I'm not too sure why it is not clear. So I can go into it, and I have a folder called my demo file. This is in cloud, okay? Even I'm using this Explorer, this is in cloud. So I have a file called DaVinci, which is basically the book, right? If I open this text file, it might take, okay, let me open it and see. So this file, consider it as a book, okay? So this has a lot of words because it's a book, right? So if I want to get a count of it, this is the most common famous example we use for demonstration, right? If I want to count words, similar words like saying, for example, word called all, right? How many times this all word has been repeated, right? If I want to get a count like that, I cannot use TSQL. There are ways of doing it, but it will use. I don't think that I can use MyLab for processing something like that if I try to use SQL, right? You might be able to write some Java or .NET codes for getting the result set, but again it's going to be very complex. Okay, but I can simply pass this. Assume that you get a result set like this, or you get a data set like this from a third-party system or from your own system. And if you want to get something like that done, I can simply pass this data set to the Hadoop environment. Now in this case, I'm going to use Azure and write a simple Hive query to get the count and take it back. Okay, right. Now anyway, I have already loaded into my HD Insight. You are seeing my HD Insight environment. So the file is there. And I'll be executing a query like this. Okay, let me open my package. I'm not going to execute the whole thing. This is my SSIS package. Okay, this task uploads my data set. This task creates the cluster on demand. Okay, right? And assume that we have a destination database called DevDay database, right? That is how I have created. So I want to load the result set into this my DevDay database. So I'll be cleaning this database, and then I'm using this data flow. Let me go into it to connect with my HD Insight using Hive ODBC driver and load it to my table. Okay, right. Since I have already uploaded my data file, I'm not going to execute this one. I have already configured my cluster, so I'm not going to execute this one. I'll just execute this part. But before that, let me show you the table. This is my SQL Server environment on-prem. Okay, so let me execute this and see whether it has data. No data. Okay, I don't have data. So what I'm going to do is, even though I'm not going to execute the whole thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the text file I received to HD Insight environment and create the cluster on demand, execute a Hive query to get it processed and get the result set back to my table. Okay, let me show you the Hive query I have written. It's a very simple one. Right, see, So this is not TSQL or PLSQL, this is HiveQL. I'm instructing this guy saying drop a table called words if it is exists, and then create an external table. There are so many concepts with Hive, right? We can create internal table or normal table and external table. And I'm creating a table with one column called text. The type is string, and format, raw format delimited, field terminated by enter, and this is stored as text file, and this is my location for it. Okay, and up to this, it just create the table. Okay, so after that, I'm creating another table called word count, and you can simply combine create table with the select statement, which is not possible with general database management system. Okay, so I'm creating a table called word count, and this is my query. This is the query I have written for getting the word count, and this query will be converted to Java, because the Hive duties is that I'm just creating a view using a function available with Hive called explode, and using split function just to split all the text or all the words, and then use it with a sort of virtual table, and finally I'm grouping by word and get the count. Okay, this is the function. Sorry, this is the Hive query I have used for processing it. So when I execute this one, it will process, right? Now it has been already processed. I'm not going to execute it, but I'll execute only this part. I have disabled these two, so I can execute the entire package. Even I cannot read it. Okay, so it is being executed now, but you can simply put this package into your scheduler and get it executed, or even you can have a listener. Whenever file is available, you can get this one automatically started. Right, so this part is done, table cleaning part is done, and second part is running. Let me go to data flow and see, and you can see this is the this part connects with the Hadoop environment, and now it is executing. The code I have written, and now it transfers data. You can see the numbers. Okay, so it is completed. So my entire the document has been processed now. I can go to my table and see whether data is recorded. Yes, I have the result set. So this is a very simple one, but even for it is complex, you can simply use this technique for processing unstructured data. You can process the mails you have received. If you go for very complex processing, you can process video or audio files, images, but most of the time we work with text files, right? You might get text files from your devices. You might get text files if you're working for telco company. You might get text files from towers, right? So all those things can be easily processed. Now see, I didn't use Java because I'm not much familiar with C# and Java, right? But I can still do it. I can still use Hadoop environment, and even for setting up Hadoop environment, configuring Hadoop environment, if you can use Azure, that is easy. Okay, so this is how you understand unstructured data, identify unstructured data, and process unstructured data. You don't need to specifically go for Microsoft platform for processing unstructured data. There are other projects or the components too. If you are really familiar with open source, you can go for it. If you are familiar with some of the things coming from Hortonworks, Cloudera, you can use tool sets given by them. But for me, since I have worked with Microsoft platform for last 10, 15 years, this is the easiest way for processing unstructured data. Okay, let me go back to my presentation. I think that's all I have. Okay, right. My email address is given with this presentation. So if you have any questions based on BI, unstructured data, big data, or the database matters, you can contact me through my email address. So I prefer to see questions. I prefer to see some new implementation. Based on my knowledge, I might be able to reply you within a couple of minutes, or I might take days for replying it, right? If you have asked something completely unknown to me. But anyway, I prefer to see questions even based on my session. Okay, so if you have no questions, then thank you very much for listening for this, and thank you very much for Excitesoft for inviting me for doing this session. I really love to speak, okay, and I really like to hear something or the feedback from the audience too. But when it's come to Sri Lanka, when it's come to most of the Asian related audience, you don't get much feedback, right? But anyway, I hope you learned something. Thank you very much.